Okay, so we're 19b, about 15, 16 lines down. We just had two sources. For somebody who didn't wash their hands in the morning before doing the service, that it's going to be invalid. And now we're going to ask why each one doesn't hold of the other one's source. So Rabbi Yonasan, my time la Amar midechizkiya. Why didn't Rabbi Yonasan hold of Chizkiya? Amar lacha hula doros with the Rabbi Yonasan felt the pasuk that Chizkiya brought to teach us that washing hands and feet is, if you don't do it, it's going to be invalid to service. That was written ledoros. That was written for the generations, meaning it wasn't used as it was used earlier for a hekish. It wasn't used as it was used earlier to compare the different laws that the other opinion compared them to. It was just written for future generations. So the idach and the other opinion, my time la'amar mehai. Why didn't he use the other source? Because he needs it for Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina. Kol kior she'ein bo kidei lekadesh arba kohanim mimenu ein mekachim bo. The kior is the sink that they used to wash the kohanim's hands and feet, and any time it didn't contain enough water to wash 4 kohanim's hands and feet, it was invalid. Shinamar v'rach tumenu Moshe v'Aaron. Okay, so anytime it didn't, how does he know that from? One more time. How does he know that from v'rach tumenu Moshe v'Aaron ubano? He knows that from the fact that we had to wash, thank you very much, Moshe and Aaron's hands and their children. That gets you 4. Now I think that the footnotes might point out a problem that they had more than 4 children. So it should be really 6 children. But either way, the 2 sources that were used earlier, either one's a hekish and the other opinion doesn't use it as a hekish, or the other opinion says it was used for something entirely differently. That's right. It was a little chilly last night. Even under 3 points. We tried. Okay. Here we go. Taner Rabban. So we're smack in the middle of 19b. How do we wash the hands of the Kohanim? Yeah. So Taner Rabbanan says the Brisa Ketzad Mitzvah Kiddush. How do you wash the hands of the Kohanim? So first opinion says Maniach Yado Hayaminis Al Gabe Raglo Hayaminis. You put the right hand on the right foot. Now, does it mean he actually puts it on the foot, or he puts it on top of it so the water goes on both? Right. It sounds like put it on the foot. Yeah. Now, the reason why I say maybe he doesn't put it directly on the foot is because the point is you have to do one washing for your hand and your foot. So even let's say you put it a foot above you put your hand 12 inches above your foot, right? So, and you can aim, it'll still get both at once. But do you have to actually put your hand on your foot? I don't know. So, okay, either way, that's the first opinion. And Yado Smolis, Algabe Raglo Smolis. And you put your left hand on your left foot. Umakadesh, and you sanctify. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer, he says, Maniach Shtei Yadav Zu Al Gavzu. So this is acrobatic. He says you got to put your 2 hands one on top of another. Val Gabe Shtei Raglo. Now put them on top of your 2 feet. Zu Al Gabe Zu Umakadesh. So they told him that's gymnastics already. Amrulo Haflagasa. That's too extreme. He Evshar Lasos came. You can't do that. Your hand on top of your hand and your foot on top of your foot, you're going to fall over. So, so they said, okay, Shapir Kamrele. That's right. That's a good rebuttal. What does that mean? You're going to fall over. So Amar Rav Yosef, no. What I mean is the Chaveiro Misayo, and your friend is going to support you. This way, if your hands and feet are on top of each other, you get all in one shot. So now, at the end of the day, what's the difference between these two opinions? It sounds like they both agree that you have to, put your hand on top of the foot and wash it. The difference is, this kind of support from a friend, is that considered valid standing or not? We have a similar idea when it comes to Shemona Esrei. If you're leaning on something and we would move that thing and you would fall, that's not considered standing. Even though right now, if someone looks at you, oh, he's standing. No. So they have this machlokas by washing. If someone needs to support you, is that considered standing or not? Amarle, Rav Sama, Brei Rav Ashi, the Ravina. Well, why don't you just sit? Just go sit and then wash. Amar Kran, no, Lasharis, you have to serve. The Sherus and service is done, Umadu, is done standing up. Probably the original source for a stand-up desk right at work. So if you're working, you got to be standing. Yeah. So now, Taner Rabbanan Kidesh of Ragla Biyom. Let's say you washed the Kohen's hands got washed in the morning, in the daytime. Ain Sar L'Kadosh B'Layla. If he comes back at nighttime to do more service, so then he does not need to wash his hands again. What about the inverse? B'Layla Tzarech L'Kadosh B'Yom. At nighttime, you have to wash your hands in the daytime. So even though you washed at nighttime, you got to wash again in the daytime. Divrei Rebbe. That's the opinion of Rebbe. That the middle of the night is a break, and therefore when you come back in the morning, you have to wash again. Shahaya Rebbe Omer Lina Moeles Bekidush Yadayim V'Raglayim. That overnight, Lina's overnight, it helps for the washing of your hands, meaning it's not considered an interruption, and you don't have to wash your hands again in the morning. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Ein Lina Moeles Bekidush Yadayim V'Raglayim. No, the nighttime is not going to help you for washing your hands and your feet. Rather, you have to do it again. So we're going to talk about this for a while. A machlokas now, Rebbe and Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, or Lazar the son of Rabbi Shimon. When you wash your hands at nighttime, do they have to be washed again in the morning? Does the nighttime cause interruption or not?
People coming to the door, taking pictures of brushing their hands in their feet.
Oh, in the show. That's funny. Good morning, Bar. So Tanya Edok, another brisa says, Haya Omed Umakriv al Gabe Mizbeach Kollel. If the Kohen's there standing and bringing sacrifices on the Mizbeach the whole night, so then Le'ora in the daytime when it's the first. Oh, speaking of light, Le'ora tone when it gets light tone Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim. Then in the morning you need to wash your hands again. Who's that? Divrei Rebbe. That's Rebbe's opinion. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shimon Omer, Kevan Shekidei Jadav Raglav Metchilas Avoda, Afilu Mikan V'Asar Yom Eino Tzarech L'Kadosh. Even if you now go and work straight 10 days in a row, now it's an exaggeration. You can't work straight 10 days in a row, but even if you're going straight, as long as you're working, then you don't have to wash your hands again, even if it's been nighttime. So, yeah, so two different disputes, two different places where you see Rebbe and Rabbi Lazar Shimon have the same dispute. Do you need to wash your hands again if nighttime passed? So now the Gemara says, why do I have to have both places where they argue? One should be enough. B'tzricha, I need both. Why? Diashminan kamaisa, if I only had the first case. He come a Rebbe to pasuk le me'avoda le'avoda. Aval b'hadle le pasuk le ema modle le Rebbe Lazar Rebbe Shimon. The first one, I understand why Rebbe says you have to go and wash again. Why? Because you stopped working. Okay, when you stopped working, you have to go wash your hands again. But the second case where you kept working consistently, so then you would have thought maybe Rebbe would agree to Rabbi Lazar Shimon, Oh, Kamashma, no. That even when you're working 10 days straight, it doesn't matter. According to Rebbe, every time a night you pass through a night, you have to wash your hands again in the morning. Now the other way. He only said it when you're working consistently, but maybe when you were working and you stopped working, maybe he would agree to Rebbe that you would have to wash your hands in the morning. That he says, no, even if you stopped working and the nighttime passed, you do not have to wash your hands in the morning. Yeah. Fine. So that's their dispute. Now, what is the reason behind their dispute? What is the source of their dispute? My time of the Rebbe. What is Rebbe's reasoning? It says in the verse, when you go into the Ohel Moed and you wash, it says, Bigishtam el hamizbeach, when you approach the mizbeach. So, yeah. So whenever you approach, you have to wash again. So you approach at nighttime, you approach in the daytime, you got to wash again. My time of Rabbi Shimon. What's the reason of Rabbi Shimon that says you do not need to wash again after a nighttime has passed? It just says as long as you enter. So since you entered already once, then the nighttime is not going to break that up. Right. Now, it sounds like this. If you would enter and then totally leave and go home and come back, it sounds like you would need a new washing. But if you're in the temple general area in the Ohel Moed and you never left, so then you don't have to wash again. As opposed to Rebbe, where every time you approach the altar, you have to wash again. So, okay. Now, I've Idak Nami Hokstiv Bivoam. Want to sleep? According to Rebbe, I started getting a little worried. So now, according to Rebbe, it says bivoam. What does he do with bivoam? Why does he not agree to Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon? So he says, iksiv bigishtam veloksiv bivoam. If it only said you approach the altar, it didn't say that you entered the Ohel Moed, so then havamina al kol gisha v'gisha. Then you would think that every time you approach the altar, you have to wash. Kasav rachmana bivoam. Therefore, it says bivoam, as long as in the daytime you've entered, and in the daytime you don't need another washing. So Rebbe needs bivoam to tell you that in the daytime, as long as you've entered and you're there for the whole day, you don't need a new washing every time you approach the altar, just the nighttime. Now, what does Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon do with the other pasuk of Bigishtam? Ve'idach nami haksiv Bigishtam. If it only had entering, it doesn't say approaching. Havamina afilu abia reikanis. He would have thought that maybe even if you come empty-handed. So why would you come empty-handed? I don't know. You entered to not work, to not do one of the services. I don't know. You want to go watch your friend work. I don't know. So you came in empty-handed. You would have thought that even that requires washing. So therefore, it tells you, no. It has to be in entering. That's for the purpose of working. That's what you have to wash. So says the one, Abia Rekanis, you can't come in and nothing to do. Haksiv L'sharis. It says you came to serve, not to do nothing. So Ella, you're right. What does he use Begishtam for? Begishtam mibayile l'chidr of Acha bar Yaakov. You need Begishtam for Rav Acha bar Yaakov. The Amr of Acha bar Yaakov hakol modim the kiddush sheni. Okay, so you need now you need this word Begishtam to teach you. Now we're jumping to the Kohen Gadol, who had many sanctifications throughout Yom Kippur. So you need it to teach the opinion of Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Who was Rav Acha bar Yaakov? Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Hakol modim. There's a debate there exactly when will the Kohen Gadol wash his hands, after the mikvah, when he puts on his clothing, before he puts on his clothing, but everyone agrees that by the second sanctification, right, every time he changed his clothing, which was 5 times, he had to go do an immersion, and he had to do washing hands and feet. So everyone agrees, B'kiddush sheni, the second time he had to sanctify his hands and his feet. So that has to be done when he's wearing his clothing. Kishu lavish mekadesh. My time wide amakra o begishtam. It says o begishtam when you're going to approach, and the Gemara means when all you're lacking is approaching, and not if you're lacking getting dressed and approaching. So even though there was a debate if he has to wash his hands and feet before he puts on his clothing or after, but according to the second time he sanctifies his hands and his feet, everyone agrees it has to be when he is clothed, because it says, "Oh, begishtam," when you approach, which means that the only thing you're lacking is approaching. Misha eino mechutzer ela gisha bilvad. Yatzazeh shemechutzer lemisha v'gisha. Excluded is the Kohen Gadol, who's not yet fully dressed, and he hasn't approached the altar yet. So that's why you need to begishta. Fine. So that's that for Rebbe, who needs a washing every night. The next morning you need a washing. And Rabbi Dovid, Rabbi Shimon says, no, the nighttime is not an interruption. You don't need a new washing. They each have their own stuff. Fine. Now, it says in that verse about washing, lahakter isha. You're going to burn up you're going to burn the sacrifice up. It's going to smoke up. So the question is, why is there that specification when it comes to the washing of the hands and the feet? That when you're burning up the sacrifices, make sure you wash. So what's the reason for that? Of course, you approach to the altar. So as long as you're approaching the altar, you have to wash your hands and feet beforehand. So what's the special pasuk of? And you have to wash hands and you have to wash when you go to burn up the sacrifice. So lamali, what's that for? Mahu detema hani mili avoda de ma'achva kapara. You would have thought that sanctification is only required by a service that requires atonement. One of the services that requires atonement. But let's say an avoda that does not require atonement. So let's say all the burning of the incense. Rashi says, all the burning of the limbs, which is the extra services. It's not part of the 4 services. The extra burning of the fats and limbs, that does not prevent your atonement from taking place. Do you have to sanctify yourself before you go and burn the limbs and the fats, let's say, by the evening time? The answer is, you would have thought not. You would have thought, that no, anytime you approach the altar, you're going to need to sanctify your hands and your feet. Yeah. Yeah. Kiyasar of Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan came Rav Dimi. He always came from Eretz Yisrael, and he always would say over teachings of Rabbi Yochanan, who was the big rabbi in Eretz Yisrael. So he came to Bavel and he told over teachings from Rabbi Yochanan. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that Ilfa had a question. Ba'i Ilfa. L'divrei ha'omer ein lina mo'elis. So according to the opinion that says the nighttime doesn't help, meaning that according to Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Shimon, that if you have a nighttime pass, you do not need to wash your hands in the morning. So ein lina mo'elis. So b'kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. So what about the water of the kir? The kir was the sink where they used to wash. Now, that water had to be fresh every day because it was sanctified in a holy vessel, the kir, and therefore, what happened if a nighttime passed and the water in the kir in the sink? How did you have the sink? It was a little sink that they would wash their hands from, the kir. Yeah. So was there?
It wasn't so little.
It wasn't so little. Yeah. It wasn't so little. Okay. So what happens if water was left there overnight? Do you say it's the same thing as the Kohanim needing to wash their hands? That according to Rabbi Shimon, that the nighttime had no effect on it was not an interruption from one washing to the next washing? Would you say the same thing by the water of the kiyur? Mahu sheyifsalu. Mi amrinan hani lamai the kiyur shadayim v'raglayim. So do you say the following, that yeah, so we're going to see that there's a whole system that they used to go and had a wheel on it, and they would roll it over, and they would dunk this kiyur into a body of water so that the water that was in the kiyur touched the water that was in the pit, and that would purify it. So let's say you didn't do that. What happens to the water? Is it going to be invalid or not? So, so what's the question? What do you need the water in the kiyur for? To wash the Kohanim's hand. So, so since that water, according to Rabbi Shimon, that sanctification is not invalid because the nighttime passed. So, lo possible hulina. So maybe the water of the kiyur is not going to be invalid either, since its whole purpose is to do what? To wash the kohanim's hands. The kohanim's hands, once they're washed, a nighttime could pass, and it's still a valid washing. You have to wash again. So maybe since the whole purpose of the water of the kiyur is for that, it's going to be fine. Oh, Dilma, no. Kaven the kiddush the hubikli sharis. At the end of the day, it became sanctified in a holy vessel, and therefore, like everything else, it can't remain overnight. You have to wash it. So that was Rav Dimi said over for Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Ilfa a question according to Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon, who says that nighttime does not affect the washing, and therefore you do not have to wash again. So that was his question. Now, the other person who used to come from Israel was Ravin. Ki asa Ravin, when Ravin came from Israel to Bavel, he would say the following: Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar Rabbi Ami, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So Ravin would say, in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, in the name of Rabbi Ami, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So they're both in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So he said, Hadar Pashit, Ilfa Kimachlokus Bazu, Kachmachlokus Bazu. So when Ravin came over, he ended up saying in the name of someone, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that according to Ilfa, it's the same machlokus. So that which Rav Dimi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan was a question for Ilfa. Ravin said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that Ilfa had an answer. And he says it was the same exact debate. It's almost time for chart. Yeah, not yet, but almost. Or not chart, maps. So, Amr Lefanav Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna. So Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna said, Rabbi Ata Omer came. So he says, Rabbi, are you really saying that? No, this is what Rav Asi said. This is what he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Ilfa, that Kiyor Shelo Shiku Mi Be'erev Mekadesh Mimenu La'avodas Laila Ulemachar Eina Mekadesh. He said that the Kiyor that was not submerged and therefore touched that water that was in the pit in the evening time, so you could still use it for the service at the nighttime. But tomorrow, once the night has passed and it's tomorrow morning, you can't use that water anymore. So first we had a question for Ilfa. Then we had that in the name of Ilfa that he said that it's fine, it's not going to invalidate it. And now Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Bisna is saying, no, Ilfa holds it has to be submerged. We have all opinions across the board. So yeah, the Havinam Ba, and then we asked, L'macher Eno Mekadesh. What does it mean tomorrow you don't need to sanctify? It doesn't sanctify. Does that mean Delot Sarech L'Kedushay? You don't need to sanctify the Kohen's hands because it does work? Sorry. So it's still a question. You don't need to sanctify his hands? Oh, Dilma, if Svibalino. Velo Pashalon. No, so really, Ilfa did have a question. When it says you don't have to sanctify in the morning, it means you don't have to because it worked from the previous night, or really it means that it didn't work, and therefore you have to do it again. Umar kapashale mifsha, meaning you wanted to come and say that Ilfa had an answer to this question. I'm telling you that it was still a question, and it wasn't an answer. Yeah. Change it to Rav Ami. Yeah, meaning that which Rav Asi said over was still a question. He's bewildered that Rabbi Ami had an answer, but according to Rav Asi, it was still a question. So he holds it's still a question. Still a question. Don't conclude according to Ilfa that we have an answer. No, Ilfa had a question. It still remains unresolved. Okay, now Tashma comes to Brisa and says, Ben Katan, so he was I believe the Kohen Gadol, and he made 12 spouts coming out of the kior that the Kohanim could all wash their hands at the same time. You could have many Kohanim. By like the Western Wall, by the coastal, they have you wash your hands. Whether it has not 12, it has a number of spouts coming out so that people can do, a lot of people can do at a time. So this he did 12 spouts. Also, Shnemasar Dod Likior, 12 spouts for the kior. Afu also Mukhani Likior, he also made a wheel for the kior. Shelo you Miyamav Nefsalim Balina. That it shouldn't be ever water inside the kior should be invalid. This way, there's a wheel on it. You could roll it over easily. So dunk it down with the pulley system and bring it back up. So clearly, this very much sounds like he did this because if he didn't do this, then the water in the kior would be invalid. So now, what's the assumption? The assumption is that you better sanctify the water in the kior because tomorrow morning we need a new sanctification. Now, tomorrow morning you need a new sanctification. So if that's true, my love. Oh no, sorry. Scratch that. It says here that that he made it to submerge it, and this sounds like we're saying it goes across the board. It's not a debate at all. So my love, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, wouldn't Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon also agree to this? Even though he does not require sanctification after the nighttime has passed, but yet doesn't he require that the kior be submerged? Now, if that would be true, then you would have a difference. You would have that according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, which is our whole question according to Ilfa, according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, there would be a difference. That a Kohen who is there overnight does not need new sanctification in the morning. However, the water inside the kior, if it remains overnight, it would need a new sanctification in the morning. So Ilfa had a question. According to Rabbi Shimon, is the kior, the sink, the same halacha as a Kohen, meaning that the nighttime doesn't do anything and the Kohen is still good? So to the water in the kior is not going to be invalid? That was Ilfa's question. So now we're showing you that we have this Rice or Mishnah, the Mishnah, that tells you that he used to make, that he made a wheel to submerge the kior to purify it. And we're assuming now it does not a debate. Everyone agrees to that. Everyone agrees to that. Even Rabbi Shimon agrees to that, which would mean that there's a split. When it comes to a Kohen, the nighttime doesn't help at all, and his sanctity remains from the previous night. The nighttime is not an interruption. When it comes to the kior, though, the nighttime would be an interruption, and that's why Ben Katan would made a wheel to submerge the kior to purify it. Okay. Says the Gemara, no, not so fast. Maybe this actually is referring to Rebbe and not Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, and therefore you have no proof. What would be according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon? You wouldn't have a proof because it's all going according to Rebbe. Rebbe holds that the nighttime, of course, is an interruption, and you need a new sanctity in the morning. According to Rebbe, it's obvious that the kior needs to be sanctified every night. The whole question was according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. That was the question. So now, and here we're gonna get a long map here, just to prove to you that we're gonna bring to you the beginning of this Mishnah, the beginning of this teaching, and we're gonna prove to you that the beginning is Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. Once the beginning is Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, it makes a lot of sense that this part that's relevant to us is also Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. If we can prove that to you, then we would have a distinction between a nighttime not being an interruption for the Kohanim, but yes, being an interruption for the kior, which would solve the inquiry of Ilfa. So just gonna get a little distracted. We're gonna get a little distracted with the maps, and then we're gonna come back. So I don't know. Yeah. So yeah. So the Hamid ratio, Rabbi Shimon. Okay, the Katani ratio. Here we go. So this is from Yuma on about what happens on Yom Kippur. So Balo Eitzel Paro. So the Kohen Gadol went in. He had his bull that he had to shech. And the question is going to be, where can you shech it? Where can you position the bull? So you have the altar. You have the altar that's on the south. So you're entering from the east, going to west. The Kodesh HaKadoshim is in the west. And the altar is towards the south, on the left side. So you're going to have the part that's directly across the altar. You're going to have a part that's going to be, I guess we call it, it's more west, closer west, and the part that's more east. You have, I guess, it would make sense to call it northeast, and I guess northwest. Right, northwest and northeast. Yeah. So you have the part that's right there, then the part that's closer, we'll call that northwest, and the part that's close to the Kodesh HaKadoshim is northwest. The part that's close to the entrance is northeast. So where was this bull positioned? Upar haya omed bein ha'ulam ulam mizbeach. The par would be between the altar, which was close to the south, between that and the antechamber, which was your area right before the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So, yeah, the charts make sense. Yeah. Okay, good. So the bull was somewhere there. Now the bull was positioned rosho lidarum. You made the bull's head face towards the altar. Its head was that way, and its panav, I guess you would turn the face, it would be west. So its legs and feet were positioned south, but its face was positioned west. That was the bull. The HaKohen, where would the Kohen be? He would be Omed b'Mizrach. He would be standing east to west. So if the bull was positioned this way, the Kohen was positioned this way. So the Kohen Omed b'Mizrach upanov l'maariv. The Kohen was standing b'Mizrach. He was standing with his back towards the east, towards the entrance, but his face was towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, was towards west. Okay, so that's that. Now, man shamisle the amar beina ulam v'lemizbeach tzafon. Now, 1 second. You have to slaughter it in the north. The simple definition of the north is right across from the altar. The altar's in the south. So south and north, right, are opposite directions. So wherever the altar is, directly corresponding to the altar is the north. But now we're saying you could actually slaughter it between the altar and antechamber, between the ulam. So 1 second, that's already called northwest. It sounds like Portland, right? That's considered northwest. So who says that northwest is north? Maybe north means north. North Portland, right? Not northwest. North Portland. Yeah. So who says that's considered north? That maybe that's considered northwest, and that's going to be invalid. Whose opinion is that? That is Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon. That's the opinion of Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, which is what we need. How do I know that he holds northwest is valid to slaughter that bull? Titania Ezu Tzafon, what's considered north? Mikir Mizbeach Tzafoni, from the wall of the north part of the altar. Va'ad Kosel Azara Tzafoni, until the wall of the north part of the Azara. So that's really northeast, no? The Azara is more east, no? By the Ulam, the Azara.
The Ulam is on the west.
Right. So now we're saying what's considered north? Mikir Mizbeach Tzafoni, from the wall of the north until Ad Kosel Azara Tzafoni, who kineged Kol HaMizbeach Kula. I guess until the wall, the northern wall of the courtyard, and kineged Kol HaMizbeach Kulan, and corresponding to the entire altar, Kulo Tzafon, but that's Divrei Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. So that's only northeast, no? The Azara's northeast. No?
Put that zero on the wall.
This first opinion is where?
So that's this area B.
If the Israelis courtyard, no?
I think they're saying from that wall.
This is the entire area directly opposite the altar, is all considered north. 23. The north is limited to the area directly north of the altar. That's directly across. And the areas to the northwest and northeast. The whole thing. The whole thing. Okay. The first opinion is the whole thing. Whether you're northeast or you're northwest, the entire area is considered north. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda. Fine. What we need is Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Mosif, he adds Af Bein Ha'ulam V'Le Mizbeach. Even between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. So I guess not only sections, I guess, A, B, and C, but even higher up, even closer to the west, between the altar and the antechamber, that's also considered north. Rebbe Mosif, Rebbe adds, Af Makom Drisas Ragle HaKohanim, Umakom Drisas Ragle Yisrael. So now where is that? Rebbe adds even the place where the Kohanim and Yisrael could walk. That's much closer. Yeah, that's east. That's east. Even that's good according to Rebbe. Aval mina chalifos v'lifnim hakol modu shepasul. Once you enter into that antechamber, then for sure everyone agrees it's going to be invalid. Okay, so what do you see? That that the part that's considered that between the mizbeach, the altar, and the ulam and antechamber is the opinion of Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. The Tizber that Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, he the low Rebbe. So clearly that area that you could slaughter between the altar and the ulam, we're saying now conclusively, is Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. And if that's true, then that would be the beginning of that mission, of that teaching would be Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. And if that's true, then the latter part's also Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. And then we can conclude that our statement is Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, which would then tell us that there's a difference between the Kohanim's washing that at nighttime would make it invalid and the Kir. So now it says the Gemara, hold on. Hashta Rabbi, the Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina Mosef. But the Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, Lo Mosef. So Rabbi was adding on to Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda said that the entire area A, B, and C is all considered north. Rabbi was adding that no, even the area that the Yisraelim could walk much more east is also okay. That's all Rebbe was asking. Well, that's all Rebbe was adding. So says the Gemara, once Rebbe's adding to Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Mosif, ad Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, lo Mosif, meaning Rebbe seems to be very much more liberal in terms of where you could slaughter this bull. So why did you assume that Rebbe's only adding on to the first opinion and not adding on to the second opinion? Maybe Rebbe is agreeing to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. He's just adding. He's adding a whole new section where the Yisraelim and the Kohanim could walk, which is much more east of the altar. So why do you assume Rebbe's only adding to the first opinion, not to the second opinion? So says the Gemara, Anon Haki Kamran, this one meant to say, if you think that this opinion, that you could slaughter the bull between the altar and the antechamber is the opinion of Rebbe, so then Lokma b'makom drisas ragli kohanim, u'b'makom drisas ragli Yisrael. Why don't you put the bull there? Meaning, if that's what Rebbe holds, so I don't understand that teaching that says you have to put the bull between the altar and the antechamber. According to Rebbe, put it over there where the Yisraelim could walk. Why do you put it all the way as close as possible to the Holy of Holies? Why? So look me b'makom drisas ragli kohanim, u'makom drisas ragli Yisrael. Elamai, what do you want to say, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon? So what do you want to say? It's Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. So let's have the same question for him. Luke may mikir mizbeach tzafoni ad kosel lazar tzafoni. Him also. Why are you placing the bull closer to the Holy of Holies? Place it directly corresponding to the altar. Why are you putting the bull as close as possible to the antechamber? Same question for him. So what are you going to say? Elamai saklamemar mishum chosha the kohen gadol. You want the kohen gadol to walk as least as possible. So when he exits the Holy of Holies, right there, that first place, shech, slaughter the bull over there. So once you're saying that for blood of Rabbi Shimon, hachanami mishum choshet the Kohen Gadol. For Rebbe also, you could say the same thing, even though he has a much more expansive opinion of where you could slaughter the bull. But the reason why it's slaughtered between the mizbeach and the antechamber is to save the Kohen Gadol from exerting more effort. I think there's a bunch of different cases in Yom, if I remember correctly, that you want to save the Kohen Gadol as much exertion as possible because he has a long day ahead of him on Yom Kippur. I guess we'll stop here. Yeah. Okay. We'll catch up at some point. Oh, there's a short top. 2 short top. 3 short top. Okay, we're in 4 short top. I'm moving.